Thank you. I listened to one of your CDs some time ago about decision making and trying to listen to my own intuition more in making decisions. And followed a number of remarkable disasters. Feelings like, oh, my intuition is saying to me, call your ex-girlfriend. And intellectually, that's not a good idea. To be reminded that it wasn't a good idea. And ironically, I do research, or used to do research in decision making. And would love your advice on how can one make decisions with presence and in a useful way?
Oh yes, thank you. That's a good question. Thank you. Do you want to stand or sit?
I have a follow-on, but maybe I should sit.
Now it's very easy to mistake an impulse that comes to you for some deeper answer that comes out of the stillness. And so in any decision-making process you have basically two factors. Well, most people only have the information that's available to you. And so make sure that you have the information with all the facts that you need. Sometimes, before making a decision, you may have a number of facts, and sometimes these facts may not be sufficient. So then you go within and see what questions you can ask in order to elicit more facts or information from whoever is capable of giving to you that information. I'm talking in very general terms, whether you're in business or wherever you are, or some personal decision that you need to arrive at. On one level, facts need to be looked at. What is the situation? And sometimes the facts are not clear enough, or there are not enough facts, and you become still and see what questions you can ask. Somebody may be able to supply more detailed facts, but in order to ask the right question, you already need a moment of stillness. So you may not immediately get an answer to stillness. The first step, as you become alert and still, is another question. A very important thing in decision-making process is not to come up with a decision, but to ask the right question that can elicit what you need in order to arrive at a decision. And in order to ask the right question, there needs to be that alert stillness for a moment, and in that alert stillness, you kind of listen within. And then a question comes. This is I often, when they call me and say, we've had this or that offer, somebody wants you to do this, somebody wants you to do that interview, somebody wants to do that. And very often, I don't immediately say yes or no. I usually come up with a few questions. What, in addition to the information that they gave me, well, what about that and that and that? And they say, oh, okay, I'll get back to you, I'll find out. And then they call again, then I know a bit more. And sometimes, on the basis of the factual information, you already know whether you want to do it or not. You more easily know that you don't want to do it, just by looking at the facts. But it may well be that you have all the facts and you're still not clear what the right course of action is. So you have exhausted the avenue of asking more questions, probably, unless something else comes to you. And then it's usually a question of becoming still, and that's the added dimension to the decision-making process. It works together with looking at the knowledge that you have in the mind, conceptual knowledge, factual knowledge, works in conjunction with a deeper intuitive knowing, and you bring the two together. It's not just the intuitive and yet you completely disregard the facts. So even with your bringing your ex-girlfriend, it's a very relatively simple thing, perhaps there was an impulse that or some belief that you should obey your impulses now and just do it. But you didn't. You also have some knowledge in your mind about what kind of a person she is, what your relationship was like, how it ended, how she might react, these are factors that you also consider. Is it a wise thing to do just on the level of thinking? You think about it, and then you go with it, becomes still. An impulse to do something is not necessarily, does not necessarily come from the deepest level. It could be an emotional impulse. It could be an impulse created by the ego to see itself as very spiritual, that you can connect with her and many different levels it could come from. Also, it's good to deal, sometimes it's good in this case where not immediate action is not required. If you delay it a little bit, wait a day and see if the next day you still feel the same, or the day after. Because in this case, for example, immediate action is not required, so it's often helpful to know whether something is real, comes from the deepest level, and give it some time. If it's still there tomorrow or next week, it's more likely to be true and come from the deepest level than an impulse can dissolve very quickly. An impulse came to me many years ago, as I've told you before on various occasions, when I lived in England, in the country. One morning, not an impulse, but a strong knowing was there that for some reason I had to move to the west coast of North America. But I didn't know why. But I didn't immediately pick up the phone and make a reservation and sell everything I have. I waited. And days passed, and every day that was still there. Several weeks passed, and it was still there. And then I couldn't. I knew this I had to do. It was not a temporary impulse or an idea that came into my mind. It came from a deeper level. If I had not obeyed it, probably I would have fallen ill or something would have gone very wrong, because I would not have gone with that deeper flow where the universe wanted to move me. So if there is time, give it time. And if something is still there after a few days or even a few weeks, then it probably comes from the deeper level. And so in many cases, it's a question of balancing factual knowledge and going beyond factual knowledge. And again, to repeat, sometimes factual knowledge is all you need, and it's immediately very clear from just looking at the facts that this, for example, is not feasible. At other times, the mind could create prematurely the idea that this cannot be done because it never has done it before. It might be wrong. So don't be too certain that when the mind says no, you really have to be very clear. If you're not totally clear, go within. So, what's your add-on?
With regards to choosing spiritual practice, for about 25 years I've had different regular practices, and I step back and go, gosh, have I really made any progress? And is my lack of progress from not sticking with just one, the way everyone's whatever. And I know sometimes in the practice we go through darkness, and that it's good to push on through to the other side. And sometimes there's no other side, you're just going into more and more darkness, it's the wrong direction. Could you recommend on how to decide what is the right practice?
The right practice, underlying any practice, is presence. No matter the externals of the practice may be different, but every practice points to, and eventually, if it succeeds, and you end up with, is presence. Remember our definition? I quoted Ramana Maharshi when he was asked, how do we know, because that's your question, whether we are making any progress on the spiritual path? And of course, you may remember his answer, the degree of absence of thinking is your criterion for judging progress on the spiritual path. Let's call it. So to what extent is there space in you? A cessation of thinking when it's not needed, rising moments of spaciousness. As you evolve spiritually, spaciousness deepens and there's more of it. So that eventually half of you is spaciousness. Don't take it too literally. Half of you is spaciousness and half of you is form, mind, knowledge, and so on. If half of you is spaciousness and half of you is form, you will lead a very balanced life. And it could be that, as in the case of Ramana Maharshi, when he was a young boy and he just had a death experience, he became 90% spaciousness. He couldn't talk anymore. And he still had a body. That's the 10%. And he sat somewhere. But then he came back to very few humans are actually, it's hard to quantify anyway, just it's more or less metaphor, speaking metaphorically. Very few humans are totally balanced between the moving in the world of form, using their mind and their knowledge, and interacting and being busy and active in the world of form, and at the same time not losing the deeper dimension of presence. So not having two separate compartments in your life. Some spiritual practitioners, meditators, develop two compartments. My spiritual practice, which they do when they meditate or go on boot camp retreats, and then my daily life. Of course, the two need to come together so that your spiritual dimension shines through all the things that you do. In other words, everything you do, there's spaciousness, there is a sense of peace that comes even while engaged in activities. You don't get frantic and upset about every little thing. There's a spaciousness in your human interactions, a sense of presence that pervades even your business dealings. So that is what Ramana Maharshi means when he talks of to be free of thinking. That spaciousness are moments when you're just alive and present, even while conducting a business. There's an alertness and a presence. And then you're more creative. The person who created the iPhone, well, the main Steve Jobs, I haven't read his entire biography, and he had certain personal idiosyncrasies which were very much egoic conditioning, but apart from his egoic conditioning, he had areas, he was a practitioner of, I believe, of Zen and meditation. He had these areas of stillness, and out of those came creativity. So he did not represent a complete, balanced coming together. Very few people have that, a complete, balanced coming together of spaciousness and form. And you don't have to achieve that. I don't have it. I don't have 50% effectiveness in form and 50% spaciousness. I'm just taking a figure. 80 to 85% spaciousness and 20 to 50% form. In other words, I'm not that great at dealing with stuff. And when I do, I'm spacious with it. My preference is not to, so I'm not that balanced. Oprah is much more balanced than I am. She is very effective in doing, has seemingly inexhaustible energy. I can't keep up with her. And yet, she doesn't always return to stillness. So she doesn't lose herself in the doing. And there are some people, but not many, who are almost a bit more in the doing than the being, but they're still to make our work fruitful and contribute a lot to the consciousness of the planet. So, what about your degree of absence of thinking?
When I do mindfulness practice, like Burmese Nasi-style practice, I find there's a lot of noise. And it may bring me insight. But when I do concentration practice, it feels great. But I don't know if it really brings me much of the moment.
Just use daily life as your practice and see if you can have it interspersed with small spaces. Like now, when you're listening, just a small space of just listening. When you walk back to your hotel, or it's a few minute walk or here to your room, a few minutes of just spacious walking. Just bring in, whenever you can, you bring in alert presence. That will work much more effectively than, I'm not against boot camps, Vipassana meditation retreats, they can be wonderful. As I said before to somebody else, don't overdo it. Equally, or I would say more important, is your daily life practice of presence. So that you use situations and become present in and through situations. Just little spaces. Don't need hours and hours of it may come. At some point you may be able to go for a long walk with very little thinking at all. But you don't need to demand that this should be happening now. Just bring in the little spaces of aware presence, and then you feel so much lighter with that. I wish you well in your continuing spiritual practice, and don't think more than is necessary.
I like that. Don't think more than is necessary. So that was pretty good. I thought that, I mean, you can condense it all into one statement really, and that is to bring that silent awareness, that presence, that stillness in your daily life, pretty much all of the time, whatever you're doing. Not all, like right before you're going to think something, have a moment of silence, a moment, just tiny, little space before you do something. So you're accessing a deeper reality, not just operating on the mind, in the mind all the time, but being silent before you do it. And give it a little space, as he says, before you enter into any kind of doing. So this is very pragmatic that we can do on a daily basis all of the time. It doesn't have to be just like, all I need to do is meditate for 10-15 minutes in the morning, and then I forget about that and go about the daily life like with no attention. This is really very important, because when we're here, we're actually kind of settling down, being able to expand awareness when we're here. We want to be able to do that every day, pretty much every day, but little. Give attention before you relate to something, do something. A second of silence, inner silence, or alert presence, as he calls it. Meaning you're alert, you're present, nothing going on in the head. Just for a moment, nothing going on in the head. No judgment, nothing, just empty. just like what we have right here, right now. And having that before you engage thought. And I do like how he says that Ramana Maharshi, he said, he estimated was about 95% in his spiritual and his alert presence. It's interesting, because who's ever said that before, about Ramana? But that's his intuitive sense, that Ramana pretty much came directly from Spirit all of the time. But I don't know, he was also very good and able to do things in life, but that really didn't matter. What mattered was that he was a good presence for everybody to feel it. What that was like. And he had a very strong force, very, very strong transmission. And he could impact people. He could impact them so that their mind did slow down in his presence. The mind slowed down big time. I felt that also with Nomi. But more so when I was at the ashrams at the ashram in the Skanda ashram and Virupaksha cave, where Ramana spent a lot of time meditating. He lived there for years in these places on the hill. And there you could feel the vibration of the place, because spiritual power develops in the place, and it's tangible when you meditate there. That's why it's so important to have a little place in your house that you sit and you meditate there, so that when you go there again, it's got a little help for you right there waiting. You've built it. You've built a little place, and then if your mind is racing, you can go there. It'll slow down once you build that spiritual power right away. You can get that help to slow down the mind, slow it down.
Well, what I was hearing too is the balance of both.
Yeah.
Which
balance
is
of-
more what our life would be.
Yeah,
Ideally.
a balance of both, yeah, that's what I jotted down. Yeah, because we tend to kind of say a lot about just don't go to the mind, don't, just nullify the mind. It doesn't inform you about the highest reality, it doesn't inform you. However, he's talking on a down-to-earth place where you can use spirit or use presence or alert or God. The word alert presence is also indicative of the silence, emptiness, which is the same thing as God. There's intelligence in that silence. It's not empty, like useless. It's just very, very effective. And you bring that from that higher reality, that only reality actually, bring that into the present in how you deal with everyday practical matters. Because most of us just operate in the mind. We rush right in, right? Boom. There's no, we haven't developed the muscle, the spiritual muscle, to bring that side of us, and it's not really a side, but that formlessness that we really are into our everyday life.
What I heard Stella saying this morning, or on the morning walk, that was doing something for herself. I mean, that's kind of the spiritual time, I would think, too.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
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 You know, we had dinner very early, 3 o'clock. And by 4 o'clock, I am through for the day. I go into my room and my glass window to the patio. That's what brings me silence because the trees dance and they bring me into this mode and I'm complete myself. And that's really my downtime.
But you're walking
Oh.
with your husband, right?
No, not at 5:20.
Oh, okay, okay.
No, he doesn't like to get up that early.
Uh-huh.
I'll go with him about 7:30. We take a short walk.
But nature, walking in nature is
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You hear the nature sounds.
Right.
You know, the coyotes, the birds, the owls. Love it.
You can actually enter into a kind of slipstream meditation when you're in when you get going meditating. And it carries you. It actually, I wonder if you've ever experienced that during meditation, where you can enter into effortlessness. It's just like you're just cruising. That's the word, you're cruising. It's a slipstream, right? Right? And then you're bringing a lot of presence into that. And if a decision needs to be made, then with that logged on, as it were, you can make the decision, you can see more clearly when the mind really. Also what he said, do not make quick decisions. This is how you can live with making a decision for quite a while. And then you gain clarity too as you look at it and make, just with the mind, assess it. That's enough. Yeah. It's very, it's difficult to do that.
One of the things I've found that helps is wait 24 hours.
Oh, well, that's what he's saying, isn't it? At least 24 hours.
It works too. Because a lot of things kind of change in that time.
Yeah, they do. They never stay. That's another big plus about all this. Is that things don't stay the same. For the most part. You were going to say, Sita?
I'm just gonna say, if you know you have to make a decision and you still have that,
Uncertainty.
not uncertainty, but that pulling sensation, like, I need to do it, If it's still there, say 2 days later, then it is the right decision.
So again, you're agreeing with him that
Yes.
you need to
Mhm.
take it. It's an interesting one. I'm working on something, but I don't think I'll bring it up. Well, I'll bring it up to a certain extent. Nomi, my teacher, teacher, I worked for him recently, and I asked him something, and I said something like that. Oh, yeah. And he said, you have to meditate until there's no possibility of ever misidentifying with the body-mind. I think I mentioned it last week. Until there's no possibility of ever misidentifying with the body-mind. Well, when I look at that, I see that as quite a difficult. But he's my teacher, and he said that to me, so I have to pay attention. But I'll be writing to him again. We need to unpack this a little more, please.
I don't think I quite understand misidentifying the body.
Misidentify with the body-mind, meaning misidentify with a me, as opposed to the limitless awareness that we are, that we will go back to when we leave this body, essentially. It's ever present. That is our true nature. I mean, that is who we are, is limitless awareness. But what happens is we're constantly misidentifying with the mind and saying things based on the concepts and feelings about this. He's giving, Eckhart Tolle is giving, taking it at a lower level and saying, okay, we need to make a decision, bringing the mind and bringing the awareness too. I think Nomi is saying, just bring in the awareness. Don't go with the mind at all. The mind is conditioned mind, is thoughts. He's hardcore. He's very hardcore, and I need to get back with him. I wouldn't argue, but I need to hear, I want him to hear the story. There's always a story, isn't there? So,
What the story is like.
life. And I agree with him when he's talking about life as the teacher. Life is the teacher. You can go on a retreat, go boot camp, whatever, but every day is your opportunity to go little by little with little spaces. So he calls it little spaces, and we've called it before as the witness consciousness. Get yourself, before jumping in, just give yourself some space to see from the point of view of the witness. And then that gives clarity when you give the space. So what was the general feeling today about playing Eckhart Tolle? What do you feel? Is this as beneficial and valuable as, say, listening to Muji talk or Ramana?
For me, I like that.
Very practical. Muji is more, let's say, spiritual. Thinking with
He's coming from the place of more of the consciousness. But what really gives the most satisfaction? Well, I suppose the most satisfaction is if a particular subject touches you, gets at where you're at with a particular issue. I think that's when it has meaning and value.
And that is, at least for me, that lets me know the purpose of email is to hear this, to apply it really to what's happening. And that's almost a decision making too, because you know if you're going in the right direction or not. At least in my case, it
So
has.
it works pretty much, the self is running the show here. Pretty much running the show. So we hear what we need to hear, and most of the time I would think that people would benefit. Most of the time. Most of the time. So, but I think maybe I'll switch things around still, go back to Muji, maybe, and just kind of play
Like the diversity.
diverse, not stick with one person. And that's essentially leaving it up to God. Just kind of picking something and then God chooses it. Oh, I wanted to add about that decision making earlier that he was talking about, give space. I wanted to add that my orientation was such that I would not act, but it would have to fall into my lap before I could act. And sure enough, the other day, something did exactly fall into my lap. And I go, okay, this must be a sign. Yeah, exactly so. This must be a sign. I'm so averse to making a decision. I'm so really averse because I've been so inculcated with the knowledge that you're not the doer. You're not the doer. God is the doer. That is to say, your innermost being, which is God, is the doer. You don't necessarily are in touch with that coming from your mind. So I was saying the other day, I'm not going to do anything, I'm not going to act on this, I'm going to wait and see what happens. And then I didn't have to wait very long. Just sort of popped in. Simply, it's fascinating, it's fascinating. Popped in like that. I think that's where I failed the most. That's where I really failed the most in terms of decision making. In other words, you've developed a sense of trust in the universe that it will provide what's necessary in the situation. You look puzzled, Lisa.
It seems like in this decision making, the ego could get in there too much, perhaps.
It could, and that's what we would want to avoid. I mean, not like the plague, as far as I'm concerned.
You keep thinking, what's the benefits here? Is it really going to bother me, hurt me? And that's the ego.
And that's all about me
question.
and the ego me. That's why I would want to leave the decision making to be as uninvolved as possible. uninvolved as possible. So this is taking this to a new level. What he was talking about, to a new level, a higher level.
Sometimes when I have a lot on my mind, and I don't know, I'm sure everybody has this, decisions or problems resolve themselves in my sleep,
Oh, yeah,
you know, and somehow things become clear the next day.
the next morning.
Is that something like this?
That's something like this, yes, because in sleep, but during, your mind is stopped. You're going along. In the early morning, you have more clarity. This is for, generally speaking, but if you have a really deep, troubling decision, I think that you would need to bring out more in terms of meditation and so forth, to analyze it that way. I mean, not analyze with the mind, but to bring clarity into the picture.
Take yourself out of it and try to look at it from the other person.
Yes, from the other person's point of view. And certainly, one does that, absolutely does that. Absolutely does that. It's not just about, okay.
I didn't really read it because I didn't read anything to cover it.
It's
Oh,
going to rain.
Is it gonna rain?
I don't
It's
know.
supposed to rain tonight, is what I know.
And I really don't want
Maybe
to.
it's getting cloudy.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to get your
We're supposed to
attention.
sort of, are you walking?
No,
Oh,
but I
You've got your car out there, right? You could go, surely, yeah, we're just ready to wrap up anyway.
just don't like to.
you're too pretty to get wet. She's starting to melt.
Yes.
There's gonna be a little puddle up there.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Did I bring a jacket? I don't think so. I don't remember.
No, that-
Okay,
that-
no?
Yeah,
Okay, nothing, because I don't need
you're
to
fine.
get wet. Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, so this thing deepens as we talk about it.
It's a good subject.
Yes, it is. We are confronted
All the
a
time.
lot with what to do, and you want to in your mind. And Adishanti, if I remember what he said once, he said, just make the decision and see what happens. That's what he said. You never know, you know.
So you're saying it could go both ways?
It looks like, I mean, he had that, or, you know, that perspective. But sometimes you don't know what's gonna happen. You're just gonna have to just do it. And,
But that's impulse, right?
no, not necessarily, I wouldn't think. That would be if you mulled over it for a long time even.
Oh, I see.
Just go ahead and do it
Without thinking anymore about it.
without thinking any more about it.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I think you could even paralyze yourself with inability to act with that. But you know, with the Spirit of God, I mean, that power out there has, is definitely there.
We're gonna tell them, Gina said we could.
Could what?
Make the decision.
Make
No, I'm
a
just
decision?
kidding. No. I think after, if something's pressing me and I've taken my time, I think 2 or 3 days
Is enough? Right,
I know the answer.
you know the answer.
As far as, it's not gonna harm anybody, it's for the best, I'm making the right decision, I'm a thinker, and say, well, if I do it this way, or if I don't do it, or if I should call somebody and ask. And then sometimes I think, no, I need to make this.
You need to, and you get to the point where nobody can make
Right.
any help for that.
And I know the moment of truth has come, that's when I do it. I should do it. Is that rational or?
Whatever feels good for you is good.
You don't have to look back.
No, I never look back. What's done is done, ooh.
No, I think you have to consider the outcome of your decision. All that sort of.
But then there's God, and that takes care of it ultimately. No matter if the outcome is negative, then there's a sense of surrender, you know. God takes care of everything. What will be, what will not be, will not be. This is from Ramana, and this is a very powerful statement. At first I would say to myself, oh, that's just a cop-out thing to say. So, you know, if it doesn't work out, well, it wasn't meant to be or something, or it, whatever. There's a way of allowing anything to be there. But what if there was real truth in that? What if there's a power so strong in the universe, God, which is actually directing the show and is actually, there is such a thing as what will be, what will not be, will not be. And before we get to that point, we're just scrambling with our brain and our aware presence and whatever to bring into the situation, and then
And you just have to yield to
you just have to yield. See, these pathways, mostly it's about yielding. Mostly it's about yielding. And then,
And giving up control.
well, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Giving up control. See, where are we really coming from? Are we coming from a place where the ego is out of it and we're seeing what's the best for the other? And not just that, but one's own sanity too. You know, you count too. But not to such an extent that it's all me and forget about the other. Not like that.
I'm sure we've all gone through this, but just the decision to move here
Oh,
was a lot of thinking, and then all of a sudden it was time, or right. And not even so nice, but making a
just
big
making
life
the
change.
move, yes.
Yeah.
Downsizing wherever, and we look, but you know, when we make the decision here, I thought, am I really ready for this? Am I ready to give up my grandkids, my daughter, my family, everybody?
That was far away.
Yes. And how am I going to take it? How am I going to readjust and, you know, start all over? Because we are.
We do.
You know, and find this and find that, and there I am. And I did very well.
And it worked out fine.
I will tell you, the first summer I cried. I sat on my sofa and cried because I was so used to having the windows open and the drapes, and I needed to adjust to the weather here. It was
Oh, because of the element.
the heat and stuff, and I would have all my shades open. You know, in Ventura, you don't need AC. You just need the ocean breeze.
Uh-huh.
That's
It is,
adjustment.
I lived in Newberry Park.
Oh, okay.
We were only like direct, about 3 miles from the ocean,
Yeah.
you know, in that direction. And kind of on a hill.
So
But,
you can identify with what I'm
Yeah.
saying, yeah.
but I came looking for this for my sister and brother-in-law who were going to move back from Oregon. But as soon as I turned through the main gate, or before that, when at the
On
corner
Highland,
there,
yes.
my mind was made up, this is for me,
Yeah.
because that 18th hole was there.
oh,
It wasn't completed, but
Yeah.
this is for me, and fortunately, my wife loved Palm Springs, and from Ventura, we go to Palm Springs occasionally, and so this was all right with her, because she's closer to someplace that she has. And so many things fortunately worked out, because we don't have the heat. And,
Yeah,
there,
Right.
we don't have the smog in Redlands that
Right.
you're used to in LA or whatever.
right.
So there were a lot of fusses, and a lot of people did a lot of research before they decided
Yeah,
here.
that's what we did, because we originally went looking at behind Diamond Auto, the homes up there, and we went to see them, and I told my husband, I said, well, this isn't downsizing. I said, look at the huge yards, you know? Because I really wasn't associated myself with a gated community. And I said, oh no, and I fought them all the way down Highland when we left there, the track over there. Came this way, and I said, I'm not ready for an old folk environment. I said, I'm
I
not.
think we all go through
Yeah.
that, wait a minute.
And the minute we turned from Highland and Brent, and I'm like you, I saw all the beauty of it. I said, oh. I said, I guess, yeah.
Isn't that the
And you no longer hear it, but it was the motto here for several years. It's the people.
Oh,
Sun Lakes, it's the people. And I thought that was very fitting, and I mentioned that now. And someone that wasn't aware of it, yes, there is a lot to that. Why they dropped it, you know, just.
well, just turn it on to Channel 10 and you'll find out why they got sick. I mean, they're accusing George Muller of being an alcoholic, accosting his neighbor with a gun. And
You're kidding.
no, it's all over that kind of trash talk, you know, with our, yeah, the ex-president. Yeah, Sandy?
Oh, at the end, I was watching Channel 97, my husband wanted to see something, whether Sally was on there or not. And then, so I watched it too while I was doing my stuff, and there was no George Moyer, so he didn't get back in.
No.
I said,
Well, he's on the city council.
Now he is, but he's been accused, there was a police report about that, that he did. And then that he went around talking about some of the things that he shouldn't have been talking
when I first, a couple of things that you're saying, coming down here, I think that's part of the decision-making scene.
Yes.
How beautiful. I mean, and you let go of this old people place.
about. Yes.
I mean, there is some kind of decision that comes there, that all these things you've had in your mind about. Yeah, and so you became more open.
And you adjust yourself to what is more suitable for you, and it makes you happy in here. You don't have to be juggling to every club, you know.
You can't.
No.
Friday things to do.
But in George Moyer's favor or whatever, I remember the very first meeting, I was in this room, and he was talking about trying not to raise fees, because of his concern about, some people are living, some
Are
are
very
widowed.
limited, yes.
Somebody was widowed or something, and you don't want them to have to leave because they're raising rates and stuff. And I was really impressed by just that little statement from him. But there's always different people.
Oh, to criticize. That's why I don't belong to clubs. I don't have the time to listen to gossip.
But I like, one reason, you go driving through a lot of areas, neighborhoods and things, and you see these cars parked on the driveway and in the street,
Right.
everywhere. I like the way it is here.
I like the rules.
Yes,
That was my decision making to move in here, because there was rules. You're not gonna have graffiti, you're not gonna
Except
have.
for swamp coolers.
Except for that, my goodness, they found that I had a swamp cooler inside
In your
the
house?
You're not allowed to swap
It's not allowed.
Wow.
How would they even know?
Well, they saw it from the front. I suppose because they were trying to see whether it needs painting or not. I told them I didn't think it needed painting, so they would come around again to check. So now they see the swamp cooler, there's a rule against that.
there is a complaint in my party that on some of the committees, people get a little authority that goes to their head. Meaning that, when they start driving the streets, they get a little bit too.
Cutting the trees like we did on it, that was such a mistake that I did, to cut my tree down. Because it left a big ugly gash in the side of the tree, and I feel badly about that.
They made you take a tree down?
Well, it comes a little bit over to the next neighbor's place, and they don't care, they have a huge tree that, I mean, it's just ridiculous. But in any case, because I wanted to comply with the rule,
Me too.
I put this horrendous, ugly, because it needed to cut it's a pine tree. And I cut a gash into it, and Cecil took note.
You didn't take time to